what is a blood clotting, why there is a need of a blood clotting, what are the pros and cons of the blood clotting. Clot. Clot means there is a formation of a thick substance in the body and a fluid or something, and any in a normal meaning we can say that there is a formation of a thick substance, or we can say conversion of a liquid state of a fluid into a solid state. Blood clotting. In general, if we discuss, when we got injured, after some time, when we got injured, blood comes out from the veins, vessels. But after some time, after a few minutes or few seconds, blood stops bleeding. Bleeding stops. So, what are the reason for stopping, for why bleeding stops? So, we will discuss, as there are certain factors which are present in blood clotting or makes this bleeding stop. When blood is shed out or collected in a container, it loses fluidity and becomes a jelly-like mass after a few minutes. This process is called as coagulation or clotting of blood. The clot is a mesh of thin fibrils entangling the blood cells, and these fibrins are consists of a fibrin molecule, and this fibrin is formed from a fibrinogen protein, and this process completes in a series of events. We will discuss it here. Factors involved in blood clotting. Coagulation of blood occurs through a series of reactions due to the activation of a variety of substances. Those substances necessary for clotting are called clotting factors. Series of reactions, or we can say cascades mechanism. There are generally 12 or 13 factors are present in blood clotting, in which factor 6 is absent. These are the clotting factors. Like factor 1 is fibrinogen protein, second factor is prothrombin, factor 3rd is tissue thromboplastin, factor 4 is calcium ions, factor 5th is labile factor, factor 7th is stable factor C. So factor 6 is absent here. Factor 8 is anti-hemophilic factor, which is the important one. If this factor 8 is absent, then the person should become hemophilic. Means there is a low amount of blood cells, hemoglobin, and it takes time to stop the bleeding. Factor 9 is the important one, that is known as Christmas factor or PTC component. PTC, that is plasma thromboplastin component. Factor 10 is the Stewart-Power factor. Factor 11 is plasma thromboplastin antecedent, PTA. Factor 12 is Hageman factor, and factor 13 is fibrin stabilizing factor. Now we'll study how these factors work or help in blood clotting. Blood clotting process is in a general view. What happens when when vessels or rupture or injury occurs? When injury occurs, blood vessel becomes damaged or rupture. Then blood vessel around wound constrict, so that extra blood doesn't comes out from the body, which reduces the blood flow to the damaged area. Vessel contracts. Then activated bloods which are running in a bloodstream comes and stick to that injury site. After sticking of a platelets into that part, platelets become sticky and clump together to form the platelet plug. By the formation of a platelet plug, blood bleeding stops. Platelets and damaged tissues, then after forming a platelet plug, bleeding stops, and they release certain factors. For example, factor 8 to initiate the process of mesh formation, clot formation. Blood clotting mechanism to form fibrin, which acts like a mesh to stop the bleeding. Finally, when factors initiate and activate, finally the fibrin clot formation is occur, as you can see here, and the injury or ruptured blood vessels become closed. Now we will study in detail. Basically, blood clotting mechanisms comprise of two pathways. First, extrinsic pathway, and the next one is intrinsic pathway. Extrinsic prothrombin activation. As soon as tissue rupture, protein plus factor 7 comes and get activated. In the presence of activated factor 7, factor 10 convert into activated factor 10. As soon as factor 10 gets activated, factor 5 comes and it activates into activated factor 5. In the presence of activated factor 5 and activated factor 10 plus lipid that is coming from the ruptured tissue, and in the presence of calcium ion, prothrombinase enzyme forms. Here, calcium ions is the most important part. If there is absence of calcium ions, this process might delay or take time. And the other one is simultaneously intrinsic prothrombin activation occurs. Surface alteration of endothelial cells, factor 12 comes and gets activated. Factor 12 plus factor 11 gets activated together in the presence of factor 11 and 12 plus in the presence of calcium ions. Factor 9 gets activated. Activated factor 9, or we can say platelet activation, occurs, and this factor 8 get activated and become active factor 8. In the presence of active factor 8, factor 10 gets activated and and then in the presence of active factor 10, factor 5 gets activated. Factor 5 or a platelet factor 3 plus factor activated factor 10, and in the presence of calcium and lipid forms again prothrombinase enzymes. Then prothrombin, which is present in the blood, gets converted, or we can say gets activated into thrombin in the presence of calcium ions. Once the thrombin gets activated, fibrinogen protein, which is present in soluble form, converts into a fibrin monomer, which is insoluble now. And in the presence of calcium ions and factor 13, fibrin monomer converts into fibrin polymer, and then finally clot formation occurs, or mesh-like formation occurs, and bleeding stops. Thank you so much.